ancestral Ho-Chunk land and the sacred land of all indigenous peoples. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Ms. Bowman? Here.
Ms. Bergdahl?
Here.
Dr. Cooper Stoll?
Here.
Dr. Garcia?
Here.
Dr. Jimenez?
Here.
Ms. Leahy?
Here.
Ms. Moots?
Here.
Mr. Korberg?
Here.
Mr. Spivey?
Absent. A quorum of the Board of Education is present, so the regularly scheduled meeting of December 19th, 2022 is called to order, and we'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand and face the American flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Dr. Cooper Stoll to accept and approve the agenda as presented. And tonight's agenda has previously been distributed to the board. So with that motion and second, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. The motion has carried, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jason Harden and the Lincoln Middle School Holiday Brass, who will tell us a little bit more.
Sure, absolutely. Like, don't usually chat, didn't they play? I don't know.
However you want to do it, Mr. Harden.
Let's play first.
Sure.
Relax a little bit.
That'd be perfect.
Yeah, but I will say, yes, the Lincoln Holiday Brass, we missed a few people tonight, but we're 25 strong regularly. And this we know as Carol the Bells, also known as Ukrainian Bell Carol. Hope you'll enjoy it. Hello, everyone. I just love performing for so many smiling faces. Kids love it. Thank you. It's nice to see you guys. So yeah, this is the Holiday Brass from Lincoln Middle School. This is probably one of our oldest band after-school activities that we've been doing since, I think, 12, 13 years ago, something like that, got going. We've since added our winter winds and our festive flutes, and if we can find more alliteration, we'll go with more things. And we added a symphonic band a number of years ago, which is an after-school group that meets in the springtime. And I have to put a plug for my newest, biggest project is the Lacrosse Stars. Some of you heard about that group. We have a middle school and high school group, and we have nice jackets. So, but it's a color guard group for middle school and high school that has attends some competitions in the Twin Cities throughout the springtime, and they're working hard putting together their show. And I hope you'll get to catch them later this spring when they're at the end of their season. They'll have some information about that. But back to these guys. We did some of the same performances we usually do in the year, recently, where we performed last Friday. Was it last Friday? Friday before. It all blends together at the Capitol in Madison. So the acoustics there are wonderful. We also took our festive flutes and our winter winds for that performance. And one of my more favorite performances that they've done, we brought back this year that we hadn't done since before the pandemic, was a performance at the mall with our alumni. So we had about 35 students all together, about 10 that are currently in high school. We've had some college ones in the past as well, and that really makes me just beam to see those kids that, you know, and they're standing like this. You can height. It's like, can you tell who's in high school? Yeah, it's great. So anyway, so I hope to have you guys back for that too in the future. But anyways, that's about it, unless you guys have any questions. You know, it's all right. We'll let you get on with your meeting.
How did you train them to play without your conducting?
Oh, okay. So typical ensembles. Hey, I love that. We would say cheers or something like that. You know, we have. So yeah, a lot of conductors, conduct groups and stuff like that. I, being a trumpet player mainly, have been in a lot of brass quintets and a lot of small ensembles, whether it's a flute quartet, brass quintet, or another kind of ensemble, are usually conducted by one of the individuals. So like being a trumpet player, sorry to get into detailed pedagogy here. So I would just kind of breathe at the beginning. I'd go, and that little time of breath, everybody paying attention, allows them to know when to start. And also you breathe in the tempo of the piece you're about to play. Mm-hmm. So that started our first year. It was easier to do. We had a regular ensemble size of 7 students, and it's grown. 1 year we were 32, and that was just a little much. So we couldn't fit in places like that too, but it settled into about 25. So I've tried to keep that tradition of not being the guy up front. You know, I like to think it's not about me. It's about them and their ability to play together and start and stop in that. So it takes a little bit of training, but they're up for it, aren't you? Yeah. Good.
They
So,
did a great job.
anyways, thank you. Thank you, guys.
Always appreciate it.
Our pleasure. Glad to continue the tradition. Thank you all.
Thank you. Yep. God, he's got me so tall. So do you know Betsy Breckenridge? So the tall tuba player was her son, and when I started at Western Lewis. At least it's not the oboe.
Yeah, there's a lot, clarinet.
I was the clarinet, so.
When Anna played the violin, our dog would howl along.
Yep.
So we'd make her play it to have the dog sing.
All right, well, let's continue on with our meeting. I believe we are on the superintendent's consent agenda. So the consent agenda is a mechanism that's used by the board to deal with routine business that must come before the body. Are there any items that the members want to remove from the consent agenda?
I'll make a
Seeing,
motion to approve the superintendent's consent agenda as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Moved by Mr. Korberg and seconded by Dr. Cooper Stoll to approve the items on the superintendent's consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion has carried, and we'll move on to the approval of the board consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Moved by Mr. Korberg, seconded by Dr. Garcia to approve the items on the board consent agenda as presented. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion has carried, and we'll move on to the information section of the meeting. And 7.01, the results monitoring report, R2, academic performance, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Engel.
So this is the part where we propose changes for our next monitoring year, and Dr. Lahucky has some recommendations for us.
Good evening. There are three indicators or three results policies that comprise R2. The first is demonstrate continuous improvement in core academic areas. So we have ELA, math, science, and social studies. The changes, well, some are forced upon us in that ACT Aspire is being retired as a product in not just the state of Wisconsin, but it's no longer available. So therefore, the state of Wisconsin has adopted the pre-ACT as our state assessment for our 9th and 10th graders. You may wonder, what is the difference between the pre-ACT and the ACT Aspire? Well, there's not a writing component. It's shorter. The pre-ACT shorter. The scoring of it will look just like the ACT. So that score from 1 to 35 is actually the pre-ACT. Whereas in the past, you'd get a scale score of like 411, and then you'd have to convert it to a predicted ACT. This will actually give you the ACT score. The difficulty for the pre-ACT is the same as the ACT. From what I understand, they'll use retired questions that were on previous ACT tests that will be part of it. It's computerized, and it will be this spring. In response to that, we also have a local change, which isn't part of R2, but I wanted to share as well, that our high schools will be moving away from the STAR assessment that they've used for a number of years to there's actually a pre-ACT product that we can use that freshmen and sophomores will take in the fall and actually prep for the regular ACT in 11th grade and also for that the WSAS assessment in the spring. So it'll give them some diagnostic data. It'll also talk to students as far as here's where you're at in your journey. This is your predicted score on your ACT. What are the types of classes you should probably take, or what are the next steps if for your university is your goal? And what does that look like for you? So I think that the move to the pre-ACT will be welcome, in that it will lead to more productive conversations, whereas that scale score for the ACT Aspire was always a bit nebulous. So, as far as the wording going, we took away a lot of the redundancy of the statement because it was already marked as far as these are our data sources. So it didn't seem like we would have to add in that as far as the proposed indicator. I used the language that we used in the R3. Students will demonstrate reasonable achievement or growth. So that's that same language we had the last time I presented the R3 to you all. And that is results policy 2.1. You notice social studies, that isn't a part of the pre-ACT, so that'll be solely the Wisconsin Forward data from 4th, 8th, and 10th grades. We usually get that data from the state in October, and we're timely presenting that in November. It's pretty easy to turn that around. So as long as the state gives us to us on time, we'll get that to you in November. Any questions about R 2.1?
Any questions from the board? Dr. Lahucky, I did notice R 2.1 indicator 4, which is the Social Studies Wisconsin Forward, does have November as the proposed month of presentation, but I also saw later in our 2.2 indicator 3 that one shows October and then December as the presentation date. Is that just the difference of when we're seeing those?
Correct. So we have it's October when available for both. For results policy 2.2, if I were to jump into that, that is broken down. We sort of suss out the depth of knowledge. I just had presented that to the board at the last one. That takes a little bit of manipulation on our part to be able to break down the specific questions that are depth of knowledge level 3. It does take a little bit longer, but really the reason for the delay is more to stagger out the reports, so we don't have a number of reports in the same month. If it would be preferred, we could easily do that in November as well, but then we would have a hole in our calendar in December.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Other thoughts from the board on 2.2? I just noticed the discrepancy, so I thought I'd just ask. Okay.
Good catch. And then this is, of all our data sources, well, this is the one I'm always most worried about, in that if the state changes how they give us the raw data, I'm out of luck. Because they don't share the actual questions and the answers like we had with the WKCE. I just get a raw Excel file that I can go in and pull this information out. So hopefully they keep sharing that. Otherwise, it'll be a very short presentation.
Sure.
The last results policy is develop skills necessary for lifelong learning. And this is the Redefining Ready report card, where we look at career ready, college ready, and career and college ready together. To me, that's one of my favorite ones to share. I hope you get a lot out of that. We have work-based learning experiences, academics. We bring in attendance rates. I think it's a well-rounded one. I would love to see us add some of our local flavor to what we define career and college ready, and be able to add those as part of it, but it's a work in progress, for sure. The change, though, is we get this at the end of the year. That's when we are able to determine college and career ready, but the proposed month is July, so it's delayed a month. Why? Same as our 2.2, to stagger it out. There was a hole in July that this data we could put in. If it would be preferred, we could do it in June. That's where it was previously. But then we would double up our results policies. So.
Any questions from the board? All right. Not hearing any. Thank you very much for that, Dr. Lahucky. And then we'll see this on the next board consent agenda. So then we can move on to the next item. Thank you, sir. We'll move on to 702, Operational Expectations Monitoring Report OE4, Personnel Administration. Dr. Engel.
Yeah, so this is a part of our regular monitoring cycle where we meet the board's expectations in terms of the indicators indicated for each policy. Mr. Wenthy today has the OE4 Personal Administration Report to give to us.
If you have any questions as I'm going through, feel free to interrupt. OE4 deals with the recruitment, employment, development, evaluation, treatment, and compensation of district employees in a manner necessary to enable the district to achieve its results policies. And I will give a summary at the end, but otherwise I'll go through the 15 indicators. OE 4.1 says that we will ensure that no person is employed by the district without first clearing through background inquiries and checks. And Indicator 1 says that 100% of regular employees hired to begin employment during the previous school year cleared all background checks prior to board approval of their hire. We're at 100% on that. We use BIB, which stands for Background Investigation Bureau. It's a nationwide, they go through all states and check everything for us. Everyone hired in this last year cleared all background checks prior to being hired. OE 4.2 ensures that no volunteer has unsupervised contact with students without first clearing reasonable background inquiries and checks. Once again, we use BIB. We are also looking at changing our screening tool and guidelines, knowing that most of our volunteers are working in collaboration with others. Some of them may have had a charge that is not directed to students, not directed to other staff. So we are looking at changing our screening tool a little bit. Our Indicator 1 says 100% of volunteer applicants submitted to HR for approval during the previous school year have been screened using reasonable background checks and successfully cleared before approval to volunteer. And our evidence says, in fact, 4.2 volunteer certification sheets by each building principal verifies that 100% of volunteers were screened prior to working with students for the last school year. 4.3, aggressively recruit, select, and retain a highly qualified and diverse staff for all positions. Indicator 1 says 100% of certified staff and support staff required to have licenses are highly qualified as defined by the DPI. The evidence is the attached OE 4.3 compliance documentation letter indicated indicates one certified staff did not have the required license with the DPI at the time of the audit for the 21-22 school year using the DPI Y staff report. The certified staff did obtain the appropriate license prior to the end of the 21-22 school year. 756 employees required licensing, therefore we are at 100% compliance with DPI required licensing for the end of the school year. The one person we had, it was a situation where they were certified kindergarten through 5th grade, and they needed 4K through 5th grade. They actually finished their whatever certification they needed at the semester. They needed a license with stipulations. We were able to obtain that, but we obtained it after the audit. So we did have everyone, but not before the original audit. Indicator 2 is an area that we'll talk about here during the summary as well. The annually calculated non-retirement teacher turnover rate will not exceed 8%. And the attached OE 4.4.3 compliance documentation letter indicates 64 of 637 teachers resigned during the 21-22 school year, which equals 10%, which is higher than the 8% threshold. That won't come as a surprise to many of you. You've heard that. This is following nationwide, statewide trends as well. No huge surprise that we were over that 8% threshold. Indicator 3, racial diversity will continue to increase from a baseline of 5.7 in the 2019-2020 school year toward the desired intermediate goal of 10%. 2021 diversity percent was 6.2. The evidence, racial diversity of the regular employees in the district as of October 22 is 6.35. 66 out of 1,039 employees are racially diverse as indicated in the October 1 EEOC report. 9 of 87 new employees hired between March and November for the 22-23 school year are racially diverse, which was at 10.3. We are doing what we can. This is a similar goal to many districts around us as well. We've been attending job fairs and diversity workshops and panel discussions, posting on historically black college and university sites. We're going to be offering a seminar this spring to promote alternative pathways to help grow our own as well. 4.4, we will aggressively recruit, select, and retain a highly qualified and diverse staff for all positions. Oh, I'm sorry, 4.4. There we go. There we go. Ensure that all staff members are qualified in providing mentoring and training to perform the responsibilities assigned to them. All right, and indicator 1 is 100% of teachers new to the district in the previous school year will participate in the district's year 1 new teacher induction program and be assigned a mentor. And our evidence is that 68 of 68 teachers hired prior to November 1 for the 21-22 school year participated in the district's new teacher induction program and were assigned a mentor. Indicator 2 says 100% of regular SPED staff hired by March 1st of the previous school year will be certified in crisis prevention techniques. And 30 of 30 of special ed staff hired during the 2021 school year completed Canvas training. One individual is not counted for failure to start employment. Identified teams are required to be fully trained on CPI, but SPED staff are required to complete the de-escalation portion of CPI, which is what was reported. 4.5, maintain an organizational culture that positively impacts the ability of staff to responsibly perform their jobs and allows them to work in an environment of professional support and courtesy. Under 4.5, we have one indicator. An annual building district employees school culture survey will include the content indicated in the interpretation above. And the evidence is that 628 employees completed the climate survey for the 21-22 year, and the results are included on that link. Actually, the questions are included. The questions are included, not the results. Yes, I'm sorry, I think that's phrased wrong on here. 4.6, any other questions on that?
Well, do we get to see the results?
I can provide them if you like next time. Yeah, we can. We debated on that, whether it was, we didn't want to sidetrack the OE4 report. We're doing it, we didn't know if the results were what was valid or whether we were doing the actual survey, so we can certainly provide that. 4.6, administer clear personnel rules and procedures for employees, including but not limited to procedures for reduction in force, staff ethics, conflicts of interest, and expected conduct of staff. Our first indicator says that 100% of regular employees who are with the district for at least 30 days. Starting the traditional school year, we'll complete the annual Fall Safe Schools module that includes district personnel policies. And the evidence is the Safe Schools compliance letter indicates 100% of staff, regular staff, have completed the training. We are going to look at streamlining some of this for tutors and coaches and some of the people like that. Our regular staff, the 5 employee groups we consider our regular groups, Scott Johnson and I worked this last year to track everyone down. We had some people all the way into spring that we were having finished, but we did get everyone to go through the Safe Schools policy. Second indicator says 100% of any formal written grievances concerning personnel policies and practices are resolved or handled without rising to the level of board action. And our evidence is that we had no formal written grievances concerning personnel policies this last year. 4.7, effectively handle employee complaints and concerns. You're going to hear some similar things here. First indicator is 100% of formal written employee complaints or grievances are resolved or handled in accordance with district policy and related employee handbook policies. And the evidence, once again, is that no written employee complaints or grievances were filed during the last year. Indicator 2, likewise, due process was ensured for 100% of employees registering a formal personnel or complaint or grievance. Once again, none. 4.8, indicator 1, 100% of job descriptions will be available to employees and for use by administrators during the hiring and evaluation process. We use these regularly as part of our job postings. We have links to these anytime we post. And the evidence is 100% of job descriptions are posted and linked through the staff portal and Google Drive for employees. 4.9, protect confidential employee information. 2 indicators. The first one, no formal written report of a breach of confidential employee information is received, and our evidence is attached. No formal written reports of breach of confidential employee information were received by the district during the last school year. And the second indicator, should a formal written report of a breach of confidential employee information be received, 100% of the reports are investigated and appropriate action is taken. Once again, none were received. 4.10. Ensure that compensation and benefit plans attract and retain high-quality employees by compensating employees within available resources in a manner consistent with the applicable marketplace, including but not limited to organizations of comparable size and type. And 4.10 has 2 indicators. The first one is less than 10% of employees leaving the district indicate that pay and or benefits was the reason they left the district. This was one where we were slightly higher. The annual employee exit survey for the 21-22 school year indicated that the exiting employees identified their reason for leaving for better pay was at 10.5 and dissatisfied with benefits was at 0.7, equaling 11.2%. 143 people responded on that exit survey over the last year. The second indicator, La Crosse will rank in the upper 20% of CESA 4 districts and upper 50% of statewide comparable districts base and highest teacher salary, base teacher assistant, base administrative assistant pay, and custodial base pay. The evidence is that the 21-22 CESA 4 wage survey indicates that the school district of La Crosse ranked number one of the approximately 20 school districts reporting in CESA 4 in the indicated positions. I do want to note Onalaska didn't submit. They were one of the schools in CESA 4 that didn't submit the survey. We look at theirs on a regular basis as well, and I believe that they are ahead of us in at least one employee group. The DPI 21-22 teacher salary data indicates that the school district of La Crosse teachers were above the average salary of statewide school districts. La Crosse averaged $61,911. The state average was $59,048. OE 4.11, consistent with the superintendent's own evaluation, evaluate all employee performances according to their contribution toward achieving the board's results policies and their compliance with the board's operational expectations policies. 4.11 has 2 indicators. Indicator 1, 95% of teachers due for summary evaluation in the previous school year are evaluated on cycle. This was one we knew going into the year as midway through the year when we made some changes, we knew that we may be falling short of this one. The attached 4.11 compliance documentation letter indicates 118 out of 126 teachers due for summary evaluation were evaluated on cycle during the 21-22 school year, which is 93.6. So we came a little bit short, but we knew we were going to. Mid-year, we did strategic abandonment strategies to reduce the stress and workload of both administrators and teachers. Frankly, I'm surprised it's as high as it was. I thought it might be even lower than that. But that was planned, and those people would be moved to the next year. Teachers and administrators in Indicator 2 will be rated as proficient or distinguished 75% of the time on the selected components comprising their summary evaluation. And the evidence is the summary of 21-22 component scores held at 90.4 of administrator component scores and 92.9 of teacher component scores were rated as proficient and distinguished. OE 4.12, reasonably include personnel in decisions that affect them. This has just one indicator, and the superintendent and/or their team will meet regularly with employee groups, and the evidence is the meeting dates that we have for the 5 groups: teacher assistants, administrative assistants, nutrition team, teachers, and custodial group. Most of them we met 3 times, a couple of them were canceled, met twice. Joint leadership meets regularly about once a month. 4.13, retaliate against any employee for initiating a legitimate complaint based upon an alleged violation of board governing policy. The superintendent may not do that. Phrase that better. The indicator 100% of formal written employee complaints reported according to district policy and procedures to the office of the superintendent are investigated without any retaliation toward the reporting employee. And the evidence is the attached OE 4.13 compliance documentation letter indicates no formal written complaints regarding any retaliation were received during the last year. 4.14, our indicate, actually, let me back up. 4.14, superintendent may not promise or guarantee permanent employment to any individual. Our indicator is 0% of candidates or employees will be guaranteed permanent employment in the district. The evidence is the attached OE 4.14 compliance documentation letter indicates no reports of non-standard hiring or guaranteed permanent offers of employment were received. And finally, 4.15, the superintendent may not change their own compensation. And our indicator, the board will annually set the compensation of the superintendent, which will be reported to HR and payroll. And the evidence is the documentation letter there indicating no change. Any questions?
Questions from the board?
I just want to go back to 4.5 for a moment. So the indicator clearly indicates that there's going to be a survey with regards to that, and so that has been met. But I do think the board needs to take a look at that, because I think the survey results would be more meaningful to respond. So at this point, the indicator is in compliance,
I would agree.
but I think the board needs to take a look at it. So.
Gladly.
Yeah.
Yep, I can definitely bring that next time.
Thank you. Yeah, and I was actually going to point that out, Dr. Cooper. So I think that we are meeting the letter in the intent, but
Right.
this may be one of those where the board may want to change the language so that we are getting exactly what we were asking for. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yes.
Other questions or comments from the board, Dr. or Ms. Leahy?
Just a question about 4.3, the turnover rate's 10%. I was wondering if you knew statewide or with the rest of the districts in CISA 4 where that might be at?
I don't have that, I don't know that offhand. I could look
Yeah,
and see
it
if I
probably
can
takes a
find that.
while to
Yeah.
find that data, so, okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I can see what I can find.
Others? Mr. Wente, I appreciate in 4.3 indicator 3 that you did specify where you are sending out recruitment and trying to hire people into the district so that that indicator can increase. We did have questions at some of the linkages about where does the district look, and I know in larger school districts, they may send staff to other states or to those institutions of higher learning to try to recruit on site, but I think that's changed in how we recruit. Given the pandemic, there are possibly better and less expensive ways to do that, but any work that you can do, I think, would be really beneficial to try to increase that percentage even more. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah, agreed.
And I would say along with that, I think the grow your own is the best thing we can be doing, because, I mean, what I see research-wise is that teachers generally stay close to where they have graduated, so.
It's hard to bring candidates in
Yes.
from other parts of the state, and even harder from other areas of the nation too. So it is. It's, if you can grow within, that's your best chances.
And then on 4.4, could you give me a little bit of insight on the mentoring program? Is it a year-long program? Is it a longer program? What does, just 50,000-foot level?
Yeah, each new teacher is assigned a mentor who works with them throughout the entire school year. Now, in addition, these last few years, we've also had success coaches that have, taken on additional guidance for those new staff as well.
Is the mentor usually in the building, same grade level? Is it?
It varies, because
differentiates?
it really varies by position.
Sure.
When we can, but there's not always, sometimes you're a silo.
Right.
You may be the only art teacher in the elementary building that you work at, so it varies.
Sure, I appreciate that. I think, did I have anything else? Oh, yes, 4.7. In discussion of indicators 1 and 2, obviously, this talks about formal written complaints. So the assumption here would be that there's usually informal situations that
yeah.
occur and that
Yeah.
they are being addressed prior to reaching the formal process, which is really good to see. And I appreciate that. That is still continuing in this district, that we're trying to work together to try to resolve issues as they arise.
Definitely, yeah, of course there are, and hopefully we resolve them before they escalate.
Absolutely. That's all I had. Anybody else? Hearing none. Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Withy. Appreciate it. And we will move on to the announcements portion, and I'll turn over to Ms. Baumann. Wonderful. I do not have any other than the regular board meetings for January are going to be January 9th and January 23rd. So just to have that on your calendars, and also to wish everybody a happy holidays, and hopefully people get to spend time with their families and not have to be attached to work as much during the holiday season. I'll turn it over to Superintendent Engel.
We have a winter break for our students coming up December 23rd through January 2nd of the new year. And there are some holidays observed here at the office. And so Hogan will be closed, or the school board office will be closed on December 23rd, the 26th, the 30th, and January 3rd.
All right, thank you. And with that, we'll move on to agenda planning.
I'd like to motion to approve the January 9th, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is that
That was me.
Just second. Thank you. Moved by Mr. Forberg and seconded by Dr. Cooper Stoll to approve the January 9th, 2023 Board of Education agenda with any additions or corrections. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed. Motion has carried. And the board debriefing, would anybody like to just comment on board debriefing for this evening?
I noticed there's new financials in the superintendent's consent agenda, and those are appreciated and helpful, so thanks, Patty.
Those are on a monthly basis, and on a quarterly basis, we'll go through them, so after December's, we present in January.
Yeah, it's a great way to compare last year to this year and kind of see where we're at, both revenues and expenditures. A good way to keep an eye on the finances and see if we're on track.
Others?
I also think the discussion around 4.5 was a good example of the board to see an indicator and the process for thinking through how to change that.
And that the next meeting would be the opportune time for the board members to bring about changes if there's changes that need to be made. So absolutely, thank you for that, Dr. Bristow. Others?
I really appreciated Lincoln Middle School being here.
Yes, it is good. Is this now, do we have to recount? Is this the second annual after the pandemic? Or could we just say that they've been here every year and forget the pandemic? I mean,
Forget the pandemic.
Yeah, I really appreciate having them here. It really does bring a great energy to the board meeting. And so thank you to Lincoln Middle School, and appreciate the students and the staff. So with that then, if there's nothing else, then thank you to the staff, the administration, everybody in the school district for your hard work this year, and I hope you have a great holidays, and we will adjourn to our workshop.